I get so many questions about resumes, like a lot. And today I'm gonna help you with yours. I'm gonna answer all your questions about resumes in college, from what even is a resume to how do I format it and everything in between. Just so you know a little bit more about the person who is giving you advice today, my name is Lottie and I am a college/career lifestyle and beauty YouTuber. So if you like videos from vlogs to professionalism tips to get ready with me, this is the channel for you. Definitely subscribe down below. I just graduated from the University of Georgia with a degree in public relations. And while I was at UGA, I went to many resume critique sessions offered by the Career Center at Georgia and spoke with lots of different career consultants about my resume and just about their tips. Before I get started, I did want to say that everyone, and I mean everyone, has a different opinion on how a resume should look and what you should include and the best words and everything like that. So take my advice with a grain of salt. This is what I've been told. So if you've been told something different, that's really normal. At the end of the day, it's really just about staying true to yourself, and that's the biggest tip I could give. I'm currently a virtual intern with the Coca-Cola company, and this is my 5th internship. So I have some experience with submitting a resume, and I just wanted to bring you guys my knowledge today. So what is a resume? A resume is basically just a document where you list any of your accomplishments, achievements, professional experience, your education, where you can give more background on yourself for someone to be able to read over to get a better understanding of who you are and your educational and professional background. Whether you're in high school, college, or beyond, if you don't have a resume, you definitely need to make one. So what's the difference between a resume and a CV? A resume, as I explained, is a one-page document that details your professional background, your education background, your skills, accomplishments, and anything else about you that you want to include. A CV, on the other hand, is curriculum vitae, which is Latin for course of life. So a CV is going to be a longer document, typically used in Europe or maybe later in your career in America. A CV is going to detail everything you've ever done: research, education, professional background, all of your skills. With a resume, you have to fit everything on one page, but with a CV, you list all of your experience. So it's just a little bit more comprehensive, whereas a resume is really just the highlights. So why do I need a resume? It's so good to have a resume on hand for so many reasons, but the main one is that you'll use it for different applications to a certain university or college, to an internship or a job, or even applications to different certificate programs or leadership positions or things like that.
You have a resume?
Yes, I do. Here it is.
It's pink.
Oh, and it's scented. I think it gives it a little something extra, don't you think?
It's so good to have this on hand and be able to just pull it out of your files and not have to worry about it when you're applying to different positions, roles, opportunities, things like that. And even if you're not currently applying, go ahead and work on it. It's so good to have in your back pocket for when you need it. Okay, so now that we know what a resume is and why we need one, what do you put on a resume? There are a lot of different sections you can include in your resume, but you don't have to include all of them. You really want to customize it to you. So one section you definitely want to include on your resume would be your name and your contact info. You want the person who's looking at your resume to know how to contact you. You can even put your LinkedIn or your social media in your contact info if you want. So a few other sections you might see in a resume include an objective line, your education experience, relevant coursework, involvement, skills and interests, professional experience, and passion projects. Those are just a few different sections that I have included on my resume in the past, but there are more sections that you could include, and you also definitely don't have to include all of those sections. Like I said, my major was public relations, and I'm interested in working in the digital, creative, advertising, marketing, and PR realm. So a lot of my stuff is a little bit more fun and creative, but you really, again, want to tailor your tone to whatever your field is. So running through those really quickly, an objective is just a quick, maybe 2 sentences statement about who you are and what you're looking for. So my objective statement on my LinkedIn says, experienced YouTube partner with a demonstrated history of working in the digital industry, a creative spirit grounded in analytical thinking with a bachelor's degree in public relations and certificates in public affairs communications and entrepreneurship from the University of Georgia. You don't really want it to be any longer than that, maybe 3 lines wide on your resume. You can put at the end of that, currently seeking opportunities in the marketing and advertising industry or something like that. So that's your objective. Moving on to your education. This is where you're gonna list your school, maybe your GPA if you have a good GPA, your major, your minor, any certificates or other programs. If you studied abroad, you could list that here as well. You can also put the location of your school and the dates attended. One section I love to recommend to people who are just getting started with their resume is a relevant coursework section. And this is great if you really need to add some meat to your resume. So as a first year at UGA, I took electives in Intro to New Media and Digital Literacy, and then I also had English courses, and these were all really great courses to highlight on my resume when applying for PR or social media positions. So of course, cater this to whatever your field is. You know, if you're in STEM, maybe you highlight your Introduction to Biology course. I'd recommend choosing courses that you got good grades in, so you can highlight the grade you received, and then just take a few bullet points from the syllabus about the course objectives and put those in your resume and say, like, this is what I gained. Another section you can include is involvement. I have this section on my resume still. It'll probably have to come off soon now that I've graduated, but I think this is a great section to have while you are in undergrad. So this section can just include any clubs you're involved with, any extracurriculars, any on-campus leadership positions, and it's just great to have it all in that one place together. A little bit separate from education, but it's also a little different from professional experience, so I really like having that separate section. Another section that most people have on their resume is skills and or interests. Skills is more so referring to any hard or soft skills that you feel like you're really skilled at. If you're great at public speaking, you'll definitely want to include that. Any kind of interpersonal communication skills like leadership, those are kind of like soft skills. And then hard skills would be things like Photoshop, Lightroom, InDesign, Final Cut Pro, things like that. And personally, I like filling up my resume with those. Of course, soft skills are important, but anyone could kind of put those on their resume. You can always Google best skills to put on your resume for X major. So that's the skills section. Then for interests, a lot of companies like to see your personal hobbies or interests. So this is where you could include just some like kind of fun facts about yourself. Like I might put indoor cycling on there. If you like to fish, put that on there. If you like sports, put that on there. Just different interests and hobbies you have so that they can get to know you a little bit better for who you are outside of work. Okay, and then the main section that I feel like should really be like the most built out by the time you graduate. It'll probably start small, hopefully will be the largest section by the time you graduate, and that is professional experience, or you can call it relevant experience. This is where you're gonna highlight any of your internships or jobs that you've had, and really showing that you've had that hands-on experience is so important to a lot of employers. So for me in this section, this is where I go through all of my internships, talk about what I did and what I learned and what my position was, things like that. I would recommend 3 bullets for older experiences and then 3 or 4 for newer experiences. And one final section that I have included on my resume in the past is passion projects. I don't have it on there anymore just because I kind of ran out of room. This is a great section to include as you're building out more of your professional experiences. So this is a great section if you have a blog or volunteer work. You also could include an entire volunteer work section. So many different sections that you could create and use on your resume, but those are just a few that I've used in the past and that are really common. Okay, so now that we've talked about what you put on your resume, here comes the stressful part. How do you format it? So in my mind, there are 2 primary ways you can format a resume, and I call them the traditional resume, aka the boring resume, and the creative resume, aka the fun resume. Again, you want to customize everything to you. Some fields definitely don't require a creative resume. I think it's great to have both, and there's no harm in using both of them for different reasons. First, I'll talk about the traditional resume, and then I'll get into the creative one. So a traditional resume is pretty boring looking. Mine is just black and white. You can make these on Word or Pages or Google Docs. It's kind of what you've seen your whole life. It's all horizontal, kind of like blocks on top of each other. You'll probably use a boring font like Times New Roman, but even though I'm kind of hating on traditional or boring resumes, they are really important and necessary. So you want to make sure you have one and you keep it up to date. Something that you've probably heard, and I completely agree with, is that it's really important to use strong action verbs in your resume. So in your bullet points about your experiences, make sure that you're starting with a verb. And I'll link an article down below with a lot of like strong words you can use in your resume. If you want to know more about the traditional resume, just leave a comment down below and I'm happy to answer. But your Career Center probably has a lot of templates on their website for traditional resumes. I know mine did, and that's kind of how I got started with mine, and then I just edited it from there. So diving deeper into the creative resume, there are so many different ways to make a creative resume. There are so many cool, unique ways that I've seen people make resumes, but also if you're not that creative, don't feel overwhelmed like you need to make it this big creative production. And once again, I cannot stress this enough, it's all about you and customizing it for who you are. Mine has a little bit of color, a little bit of fun, a little bit of pizzazz, but it's not too crazy. A few different applications you could use to create a creative resume would be Adobe InDesign and Canva. Those are the 2 that come to mind for me, but there are a ton of creative templates that you can get on Etsy and things like that. that. First thing I want to address about my creative resume is that I do have my photo on it. I have a few versions with like a logo or like an L where my picture is, but this is something that I didn't learn until probably it was too late, but it's better to not have your photo on your resume. The basic reason why is because sometimes employers, especially big company employers, they will have to disqualify you immediately if they see a photo of you because of different implicit bias rules they have in place. For me, sending a resume, I am usually sending my traditional resume into big companies or into portals for applications, and I'm sending my creative resume when I'm applying to more personal things where just emailing my resume to someone. And I think that it's just helpful for people to be able to match a face with a name. You definitely don't have to include your photo, and it's a very contested issue. Now I have a version of my resume where I include this digital portrait of myself as my photo, and I'm curious about the rules if digital portraits can get you kicked out. I still probably wouldn't test that, but I'm using that now. And then I also have like other little like L, or like I have a butterfly that I'll put there sometimes. But what I really like about a creative resume is it gives you the opportunity to introduce a little bit more color. You don't want to go crazy, maybe pick one accent color. I would definitely recommend using a very readable standard basic font in the body of your resume. If you wanted to put your name in like a handwritten font or just something a little more creative, then that's kind of more on the table with a creative resume. Something I 100% recommend doing is using visual hierarchy, is a term that I learned in my graphic design class. And basically it's just using different elements of design to guide the eye and show them what's important, what's not as important, and help the reader feel like the document is organized, if that makes sense. So I do this, I use bold font and thinner, lighter font to kind of differentiate a header from a bullet, things like that. Something I really love about creative resumes is that they allow for 2 columns, and this isn't really common on a traditional resume. When I knew I wanted to make a creative resume, I literally got out a piece of paper and just sketched in my head what I wanted my ideal one to look like. Like I said, there's so many templates on like Pinterest, Canva, Etsy that it can feel a little overwhelming. Once you kind of go through a bunch of different ideas to get inspiration, put all of them away. I recommend just sketching out. I'm a terrible drawer, but I just kind of sketched what I was thinking, and that was really helpful for me because then I kind of had a vision for making my own. Definitely want to strike a balance between too much and not enough. Give a little salt bae, like a little sprinkle of personality. Do not use some fun crazy font throughout your whole resume, or even like on every header. Like, don't go crazy with the colors. It really is that first impression, and it's really important. So that's how you format a creative resume. Again, there's not really a way to do it, but it's really up to you. Now I'm gonna answer some of your questions that you submitted about resumes. I wanted to make sure I didn't miss anything, so I asked if you all had any questions on my Instagram. Make sure you're following me if you're not already. And you guys submitted some great questions, and I think that these are really frequently asked questions when it comes to resumes. They're gonna be great to hit on. The first question is, how exactly do you edit your resume for specific jobs? I think this is a great question because it's really important to tailor your resume. The ways you might edit your resume would be highlighting different experiences. So maybe you change your objective if you have an objective line. If you're applying to a corporate communications role versus a creative agency, those are 2 really different vibes. And you could change the bullet points in your experiences to call out some of the things that they might be looking for. When you apply to something, it's not about you, it's about the position, and that's something that took me so long to learn. But they're looking to fill a position, they're not looking for you. So take a look at what they're looking for, take a look at the responsibilities of the role, and show that you would absolutely crush all of those responsibilities. Also, you can tailor your skills based on the position you're applying for. So if they want someone who is a strong public speaker, is creative, is blah blah blah, take what they're looking for and add that to your skills section if it is a skill. Some things will definitely stay the same throughout all of your resumes, but those are a few ways you can tailor it. Applying to an internship for something I have no experience in, what can I add to my resume? Definitely relevant coursework. If not, maybe take a LinkedIn Learning course on it and show your certification there. Also, if you're looking to get into a field that you have no experience in, maybe try joining a club that is in that field, because even if you don't have actual internship or work experience, having the insight from that club or on-campus organization can be really helpful and a good talking point in interviews. And something else to always be thinking about are things you can add to your resume where you create your own experience. experience. So for me, this is like a podcast, a YouTube channel, a blog, a website, an Etsy shop, like any just kind of passion project around that industry is always really helpful. And including some of these create your own experiences shows that you have a go-getter attitude and you can figure things out for yourself and teach yourself things. So I think that's really great too. What is the biggest mistake I can make on a resume? I think a few of the top mistakes you could make would be having typos. Do not spell something wrong. None of that. None of that. Make sure everything is formatted in the same way. So if you're using a period at the end of your sentences or a period at the end of your bullet points, make sure you have a period at the end of all of your bullet points. Just make it consistent. If this is bold, make that bold. If this is italic, make that italic. Another big error I think is having your resume be more than a page. People don't have time to look at your one page, let alone 2 or 3 pages. That's what a CV is for, and they probably would have asked for that if they wanted that. So really pick the things that you think make you a great candidate for what you're applying to and highlight those. This is an excellent question. When do you use your creative resume versus traditional? For me, I use my traditional resume anytime I'm applying to something that is going into a portal. I say this because a lot of these portals have resume scanners that scan your resume for keywords, that you have the right GPA, whatever it may be, to filter these resumes. I think any other instance, I like to use my creative resume. I do think that companies are starting to realize that people are submitting creative resumes more often and that there is a mistake where creative ones are thrown out or kept by accident. And I'm hoping that these softwares and readers are going to become more intelligent and we can just all use our creative resumes going forward. But for now, you don't want to count yourself out on an opportunity just because you submitted the wrong kind of format. How important is it for the resume to be graphically aesthetic or pretty? My advice here would be to make sure that your resume is organized. I think that's the most important piece. If it's just messy, then I'm out. In terms of how important is it to be pretty, I think it depends on the role you're applying for. If you're applying to be a graphic designer, I think it's going to be more important that your resume is pretty. If you're applying to be a data analyst, not as important. When do you stop using honors and awards from high school on your resume? I think it's okay to still have it on there when you're a freshman, but once you're a sophomore, I would just make it all about your university stuff. But you can list jobs from high school on your resume as like a sophomore or a junior. If you had a job senior year working at like Chick-fil-A, that's great to put on your resume and you can talk about all the skills that you gained from that. I would leave that, but I would take off like junior year history award, things like that. Do they have to be 1 page? Yes. Sorry guys. So that is my video on resumes, you guys. I hope that it was helpful. If it was, give this video a thumbs up and make sure you subscribe if you're new here. I'd love to have you. Leave your resume tips in the comments below. Again, this is my opinion. Everyone has different opinions on resumes, so you just kind of have to go with what your gut's telling you and or what your college career consultant is telling you. Thank you all so much for watching. If you made it to the end, comment down below what color you are gonna add into your creative resume if you're gonna make one, because I'd love to know like your accent color. And I think that's pretty much it for this video. I'll see you in my next one. Bye.